Hey everybody, welcome back to the Music Fitness channel. In this video we're talking about power chords. We're going to talk about why they exist, how to play them, and then I'm going to demonstrate a couple exercises we'll use to get better at them. Power chords started showing up probably around the late 70s, early 80s when rock and roll started getting really heavy, started using a lot of high gain or distortion effects. Before then, guitarists were using just a lot of these open chords, G and C. It sounds nice. But once you start using some distortion or some high gain, let me change the channel on my amp. Now those chords sound like this. It's kind of muddy sounding. It's hard to tell even what chords are being played. So rather than adjusting the effects they were using, they adjusted the chord. They dropped one of the notes in the chord and started playing the shell of the chord. The shell of the chord is neither major or minor, but it can be interchanged in a song, and it functions the same way. That's a lot of music theory we're not going to get into. This channel's more about doing and less about talking, so I'm sure there's plenty of other videos out there that get into the music theory of power chords. So instead of playing G major to C major like this, we could play G5 and C5 like this. And if you're singing a melody or playing in a band, that's gonna work just as well as playing the open chords, and it will sound better. And as an added bonus, we don't have to memorize a bunch of shapes like we did the open chords. We just have to get comfortable playing just one shape, moving it around. Yeah, it's powerful sounding, but it's also powerful in the sense that, once you have this down, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs you can get learning. So yeah, definitely master this as soon as possible. This chord is relatively easy to play, but there are a couple things that make it a little bit tricky. So let's get into how you play it. We can set this up almost on any string in any fret, but we're gonna start on the top string. That's where most of them are played anyway. So we're gonna start with our first finger on the 6th string, 5th fret. Then your 3rd finger is gonna move down to the next string, the 5th string, going into the 7th fret. And then your pinky is gonna be in the 7th fret as well, just on the next string down on the 4th string. What's tricky about it is we only want to hear the strings that your fingers are on. So you can either get really good at only hitting the 3 strings. What I would suggest is trying to mute the other strings with your first finger so that you hear this on the bottom strings. And then you can just hit all the strings and you only hear the ones you want. So let me get some dents in my finger here and I'll show you where the strings are lining up. The top string is on the front of my finger. Usually that's a no-no in guitar because it blocks, other open strings, but we want to block other open strings. So we're gonna use the front of our finger, and then the dents are on the tips of my finger here. So you'll want to use the face of your finger on this string and then the very tips of your fingers here. If we're setting this chord up on the next strings down, on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings, there's one other thing to watch out for. You still want to use the face of your finger here to block these strings down here. But what I do is also use the very tip of my finger here to block that top string. It's not really on top of the string, it's just right under it, if you can see that. So with the tip of my finger touching this string and the front of my finger down here blocking these strings, I can hit all the strings and I only hear 3 of them. This is usually kind of an awkward chord for my students when I first show it to them, mostly because I don't think they're used to using their ring finger and their pinky as much as you have to with this chord. You have to get used to distributing the pressure across all of those fingers equally and blocking these strings down here. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. But just like a gymnast has to be flexible enough and strong enough to pull off all the crazy moves they do, so does your hand. It's probably never had to work like this before, so you got to give it some time to get used to it. So just be patient, be consistent, and eventually I promise it's going to feel comfortable and automatic. The exercises we're going to do are going to seem pretty easy at first, but if you're really trying to mute those strings and get only the strings ringing that you want to hear, then it should be pretty challenging. Usually the challenges I see pop up with my students when they're learning power chord songs would be big jumps like that, and also moving from one set of strings to the next. So the exercises we're going to go over will help you master those two fundamental moves. The first exercise we're going to call power chord yo-yos. This is going to be more for shifting the power chord along the same strings. We're going to start with our first finger in the first fret, 6th string. We'll build a power chord. And then the goal is to move from one power chord to the next, and then back. And then we'll hop down to the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings and do the same thing. We'll increase the challenge by doing bigger jumps. So the first one might be easy. Again, unless you're really trying to focus on blocking those strings, then it should be challenging. When we play it with the metronome, we're gonna start doing 2 clicks for each chord. Make sure you hold the chord until the 2nd click, so you're not just doing these short little things. We want there to be a sustained note. So here's what the exercise looks like with a metronome. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then I change strings. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then we'll do that up to 120 beats per minute. Then we'll go back to 60 beats per minute, and we'll do 1 click each until we get to 120 beats per minute. By the end of the video, here's what you should be able to do. And again, that might seem like it's really easy, but you must block these strings down here. If you don't, it doesn't count. The other exercise we're gonna do is gonna be called power chord jumps. This one is obviously gonna help you get used to jumping from one set of strings to the next. And here's what it looks like. We start on the 6th string, 1st fret, with our first finger on the 6th string, 1st fret. Then we hop that down a set of strings. We go over to the next fret, top strings again. Then go down a set of strings. And then we go backwards. Just like the other exercise, make sure you're blocking those strings or it doesn't count. Also make sure you're holding the chord until the 2nd click and then changing. So here's what it sounds like with a metronome. And just like the other one, we'll go up to 120, then we'll go back to 60 and do 1 click, and then work our way up to 120 with 1 click. And then it would sound like this. And that should be a challenge if you're trying to play it cleanly. So don't rush perfection. Make sure you're not getting these little fuzzy notes, or you're getting that, or they're short and choppy. Try and get it to sound exactly like I played it. Well, that's gonna do it for this demonstration. If you have any questions or need further explanation, let me know in the comments. I promise I will respond. Also, I do have a vague outline for the videos I'm going to cover and what order they're going to be in and all that. But if there's anything specific you guys want to know, let me know, and I'll take a break from my list to cover some topics that are more in demand. So, all right, well, keep up the good work. See you guys in the next video.